Man saves freezing German Shepherd in minus 30 degrees Celsius weather. What happens next will shock you. A deadly winter's night. The night was a merciless beast, its icy fangs sinking deep into the land. The temperature had plummeted to a bone-shattering minus 30 degrees Celsius, turning the world into a frozen wasteland. Trees groaned under the weight of snow, their branches cracking like gunshots in the silence. The wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping through the forest with enough force to steal the breath from a man's lungs. Few dared to venture out in such conditions. Even the hardiest wildlife had burrowed deep into their dens, waiting for the storm to pass. But Jack Thompson was no stranger to the wilderness. A seasoned outdoorsman and wildlife photographer, he had spent years documenting the untamed beauty of the wild. Tonight, however, even he felt a gnawing unease. The storm was worsening by the minute, and his instincts screamed at him to seek shelter. His old truck, a trusty but battered Ford, crawled along the icy road, headlights cutting through the swirling snow. The heater fought a losing battle against the cold, and Jack's fingers ached despite his thick gloves. His only goal was to make it back to his remote cabin before the storm swallowed him whole. Then, something moved in the darkness. A ghost in the snow. At first, Jack thought it was just a trick of the wind, a snowdrift shifting in the gale. But as he squinted through the frosted windshield, he saw it again. A faint, shuddering movement near the roadside. His pulse quickened. Pulling over, Jack stepped out into the blizzard, the cold hitting him like a physical blow. Snow stung his face as he trudged forward, his boots sinking deep into the powder. And then his breath caught. Curled in a frozen heap lay a German Shepherd, its once majestic coat now matted with ice. The dog's ribs rose and fell in shallow, desperate breaths, its body racked with violent tremors. Frost clung to its muzzle, and its eyes, half-lidded and glazed, stared blankly ahead. Jack's heart clenched. The dog was dying. The rescue begins. "Easy, boy," Jack murmured, kneeling beside the frozen animal. He didn't dare move too fast. Hypothermia could kill as easily as shock. Slowly, he peeled off his gloves and pressed his palms against the dog's chest. The faintest heartbeat fluttered beneath his fingertips. Still alive. Barely. With careful urgency, Jack wrapped the dog in the thick wool blanket he kept in his truck. The animal didn't resist. It didn't even whimper. Its body was shutting down. "Hang on," Jack whispered, lifting the limp form into his arms. The dog was heavier than expected, a solid mass of muscle now weakened by cold. He carried it to the truck, bundling it onto the passenger seat before cranking the heater to full blast. The drive back to the cabin was a nightmare. The storm raged harder, visibility dropping to near zero. Jack's knuckles whitened on the wheel as he stole glances at the dog. "Don't die. Don't you dare die on me." Fighting for life. When they finally reached the cabin, Jack burst through the door, kicking snow from his boots as he rushed inside. He laid the dog by the roaring fireplace, then sprang into action. Warm towels, hot water bottles, gentle friction to restore circulation. The dog, now clearly a male, barely stirred as Jack worked. His breathing was still too shallow, his body still too cold. Then, a breakthrough. As Jack massaged the dog's paws, one ice-crusted eyelid flickered. A weak groan escaped its throat. "That's it, Jack urged. "Fight, boy, fight." He warmed broth on the stove, then spooned it carefully into the dog's mouth. At first, nothing, then a feeble lick, another. Jack exhaled in relief. The long road to recovery. For 3 days, Jack barely slept. He kept vigil by the fireplace, monitoring the dog's every breath. Slowly, warmth returned to its body. Its shivering subsided. Its eyes, once glazed, now held flickers of awareness. By the 4th day, the dog was standing, wobbly but determined. Jack grinned. "You're one tough mutt, you know that?" The dog, now christened Max, after the name on his collar, responded with a weak tail wag. The shocking discovery. It wasn't until a week later, while brushing Max's thick fur, that Jack noticed the tag he'd missed before. Max, owner, Lucy Harris. Phone, 555-0192. Jack's stomach dropped. Max had a family. The reunion that broke the internet. When Lucy Harris answered the phone, her voice cracked with disbelief. "Max? You found him?" Within hours, she and her 2 children were at Jack's cabin. The moment Max saw them, he exploded with joy, barking, spinning, nearly knocking the kids over with his affection. Lucy sobbed into his fur. "We searched for weeks. We thought, Jack watched, throat tight. He'd grown attached. But this was where Max belonged." As they prepared to leave, Lucy turned to him, tears in her eyes. "You saved him. How can we ever thank you?" Jack shook his head. "Just seeing him happy is enough." The aftermath. A viral sensation. What Jack didn't expect was the storm that would follow. Not of snow and ice, but of attention, gratitude, and life-changing opportunities. Lucy, overwhelmed with relief and joy, had posted the story on social media late one night, her fingers trembling as she typed out the details. "This man saved my dog's life in -30 degrees Celsius weather. I will never be able to thank him enough." She attached a photo of Jack kneeling beside Max in the cabin, the firelight casting a warm glow over them both. By morning, the post had been shared thousands of times. By noon, it had gone viral. News outlets scrambled to cover the story. "Heroic outdoorsman saves dog from certain death in blizzard," blared the headlines. Local TV stations sent reporters to Jack's cabin, their cameras capturing the rugged landscape where the rescue had taken place. Max, now fully recovered, wagged his tail on cue, his story captivating the nation. But the real shock came in the flood of messages that followed. First, a representative from the Northern Wilderness Conservation Alliance reached out. "We've been following your wildlife photography for years," they said. "We'd love to fund your next expedition. Document the endangered species in the Arctic Circle." Then a publisher slid into Jack's DMS. "We want a book deal. Your story, the rescue, your life in the wild. It's inspiring." And Max? He became an overnight celebrity. Memes of his frostbitten face with the caption, "I lived, bitch," circulated the internet. A pet food brand offered him an endorsement deal. Strangers sent handwritten letters, toys, and even hand-knit sweaters to Lucy's address. Jack, a man who had spent years in solitude, suddenly found himself in the spotlight. The twist no one saw coming. A month later, Jack sat in his cabin, flipping through the offers piled on his table. The world wanted a piece of him now, but something still felt unfinished. Then his phone rang. Lucy's name flashed on the screen. He answered, expecting another thank you, maybe an update on Max's newfound fame. But her voice was different this time. Softer, hesitant. Jack, I don't know how to say this, she began, but Max hasn't been the same since we left you. Jack's grip tightened on the phone. He whines at the door every night, Lucy continued. He sits by the window like he's waiting for someone. And then she let out a small, disbelieving laugh. I showed him a photo of you on my phone, and he lost it. Started barking, tail going crazy. It's like he misses you. Jack's chest ached. He hadn't admitted it to anyone, but he'd missed Max too. The way the dog would nudge his hand for scratches. The way he'd sprawl out by the fire like he owned the place. There was a long pause. Then, we were wondering, Lucy said carefully, if you'd like to visit, or maybe more than visit. Jack's breath caught. More? Lucy exhaled. Look, the kids adore you. Max is obsessed with you. And honestly, she hesitated, then laughed nervously. I've never met anyone like you before. The silence stretched between them, electric. Jack stared out the window, where the first hints of spring were finally breaking through the snow. A month ago, he'd been alone in the wilderness, content with his quiet life. Now fate was offering him something he hadn't even known he wanted. The choice that would change everything. The next morning, Jack packed his truck, not for another solo expedition, but for the long drive back to Lucy's town. Max's tail was a blur of excitement when Jack walked through the door. The kids tackled him with hugs. And Lucy? She smiled at him, a silent question in her eyes. Jack didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee, not for a proposal, but to let Max bowl him over in a flurry of happy barks and licks. As laughter filled the house, Jack knew. Some rescues don't just save lives, they build them. Epilogue 1 year later. Max became the official mascot for the Northern Wilderness Conservation Alliance, starring in their viral campaign, Number Survivor Dog. Jack's book, The Night I Found Max, became a bestseller with a film adaptation in the works. Lucy and Jack opened a wilderness rescue center together, specializing in lost and injured animals. And every winter, when the first snow falls, they all curl up by the fire, together.